Hey there, fellow classic comic collectors. As always, I'm Scott Harris King, and today I'm here once again to talk to you about Travis Morgan, the Warlord. Enter the lost world of the Warlord, and today we're going to be talking about issues 72 to 100. Now, in the previous videos, obviously, we covered issues 1 to 71, but there's a couple distinct eras. Issues 1 to 50 are done by Mike Grell, but starting with issue 52, even though Grell's still in the credits, it's actually his then-wife Sharon Grell who is ghostwriting the strip. And so we have a couple different eras there going on, but they both left the book after issue 71, so we have an all-new creative team starting here with issue 72. That's what we're going to talk about here, because this is the era where I started reading. My first issue was 90, which we'll get to here, right in the middle of a giant epic storyline by the new creative team. And they actually start setting things up right off the bat with this very first issue, 72. Putting the pieces into play for a storyline that's going to continue starting here all the way to issue 100. A giant, super epic. There's going to be some creative team shifts, which I'm definitely going to talk about here. But it's Cary Burkett writing, and it's Dan Jurgens on art. Classic Warlord team of Burkett and Jurgens. And here in this issue, what they start doing with Cary Burkett coming in, the new writer, is he immediately starts bringing in new characters. So Warlord has a small cast of like recurring characters. Obviously, we have Travis Morgan, and then starting, well, she first appeared in 38, but then starting really with issue 52, we get his daughter, Jennifer Morgan. The Sorceress is a regular member. We got Tara, the Queen of Shambhala, Warlord's wife. And then we also have Shakira, the Catwoman, Warlord's companion. Those are the main characters. Additionally, we occasionally have Matchheist or Machiste. I'm still going to call him Matchheist. I'm sorry, I know that's not how it's pronounced, but that's how it's always been pronounced in my head. And also Mariah. The two of them sometimes show up in addition to the Thief Prince Ashir. These are the characters. I'm just setting the stage because those have kind of been the characters for the first 70 issues. Occasionally we get people here and there, but those are really the only characters that have stuck around. But Cary Burkett clearly has some other things in mind. So he brings in some major new characters starting here with 72 with the introduction of Scarheart. This is Scarheart. He's sort of a Conan-esque barbarian. He's going to be a cast member starting with this issue. We're going to get another one I'll show you in the cover coming up here. 73, continuation from 72. Scarheart is, again, he's like a Conan-esque barbarian from another dimension who accidentally comes through a portal. 74, the return of Tara. This was during one of these periods where Warlord was off on his adventures. Now he returns to Shambhala here to see Tara for the first time in a while. And this is where things really kick off with issue 75, where there are these new Atlanteans. So, of course, the history of Atlantis is a major part of the Warlord mythos in Skartaris, the pocket dimension that he's in. There's a bunch of relics from Atlantis, because when Atlantis fell, one of the groups of survivors, of refugees that were fleeing the destruction of Atlantis, went through a portal and ended up in Skartaris. Now, in this storyline, we have the New Atlanteans, which is a group of people that are using this Atlantean technology, and there's a mysterious evil figure that's sort of running things. That's kind of like the High Evolutionary, because the New Atlanteans are all beast men. They're all like tigers and other like animals that have been mutated into men or something like that. And so they attack and conquer Shambhala, and that's the main storyline throughout this run, is Shambhala falls, and so Warlord is now leading this resistance army that's trying to reclaim their homeland and save Skartaris from being completely overrun. All the different kingdoms are being conquered, and so they form this army that's like all the different refugees, the survivors from the different fallen kingdoms come together under Warlord's banner. It's great. I love it. And it starts here 76. We see Sabretooth here. That's the main bad guy. As you can see, he's a half man, half tiger with a nice early 80s headband. This is Prince Ashir. We're starting to get some of the characters set up here. Now, I mentioned there's a character who's going to a couple more issues before he's on the cover, but in this area here, actually just before this storyline starts, was also one of the Warlord annuals. So right after we get Scarheart, we also get introduced to another character named Christopher, who you'll see in a minute, who is another recurring main character. He's a healer and a warrior, healer first and foremost, who joins Warlord on a bunch of adventures and joins the army. And so again, Cary Burkett kind of introducing these new major supporting characters in quick succession as he's setting up his storyline. 77. But the storyline is not nearly as linear as it sounds. That's why it takes so long all the way to issue 100, because there's a lot of really unexpected twists and turns, one of which starts here in issue 78. You can see on the cover, Travis Morgan is looking at some kind of futuristic Air Force identity card, and it's for him, and it's with a flying saucer. So they find these flying saucers, and he can't figure out what that is. There's going to be time travel. Yes, folks, there's going to be more time travel. I actually wanted to mention in the previous video, I had talked about them going through a portal to the surface world. Well, the surface world that they went to is actually in a future version of Australia, which was sort of a post-apocalyptic. And one thing I forgot to mention that aspect of it in the last video for that story around issue 70, because it was basically clearly a Mad Max thing, because this is coming out in the early 80s, so it's definitely inspired by Mad Max. I just wanted to mention that. But here we get some time travel starting to happen. Here's Christopher on the cover here, and you can see there's like a ghost ship, like a battleship. You can see my copy is also signed by artist Pat Broderick. So things are starting to get weird, and they just keep getting weirder and weirder. Here's a cool cover by Dan Jurgens. I've mentioned it before, but for me, Warlord has consistently like some of the best covers for a series of any of the series that I've seen. Here's Jennifer Morgan, and you can see in the smoke, I haven't talked about him yet in this video, it's Tinder, the other sort of recurring character. It's Warlord's son. Now you remember this subplot began back in issue 15. Here we are in issue 81, and he's still around. He's one of the people in the camp, in Warlord's camp, one of the survivors, but he still doesn't know that Tara and Travis Morgan are his parents, and he's not going to find out for another 30 years. So there's still a ways to go on that one. 82. Here you see that Travis Morgan is using a machine gun. Things are getting crazy, and basically what happens during this part of the storyline is Warlord ends up going to the future, and it's like a different future, but it's also one where like fascists or something have taken over. And when Warlord first appeared back in the first couple issues of the series, he was captured and became like a gladiator and led like a slave revolt to overthrow the evil rulers, including his archenemy Demos. We get that kind of storyline again here, where again there's sort of like this enslaved sort of underclass in the United States of the future, the poor people. And Travis Morgan, with the help of Christopher, who has quickly become one of the main characters in the series, end up leading a rebellion, and it ends with this unlikely series of events where Warlord becomes the president of the United States. I love this storyline. I mean, one thing I love about Warlord is because it's a mix of fantasy and science fiction, they can kind of do anything they want. It's mostly fantasy, but here Cary Burkett's really tapped into the fact that they have all this futuristic Atlantean technology, like they have advanced technology already in the Warlord universe. So he's like, you know what, let's go with it. They also have done time travel in some of the previous stories, but they were going to the past. So He's just sort of extrapolating here. I love this sort of crazy stuff. So like right in the middle of this big epic storyline, where he's trying to reconquer and liberate Shambhala, he has this diversion where he goes to the future and has to liberate the United States and becomes the president. Here he is flying the flying saucer. Remember now it's been like 7 issues since he found the flying saucer that had his ID card in it. And here we're going to find out how that happened, because basically he takes the flying saucer back in time to his own time and lands it there, like in his own recent past, basically. There's a character in this story in the future who ends up also coming back in time, but he gets like shunted way back in time. And in issue 86, we find out that he's now the Forever Man, and he's basically immortal. And he got stuck like 50,000 years in the past, and Warlord meets him in his present. Now that he's back in his present day, he meets him again. So he just had been interacting with this character for a few issues, sort of in this futuristic science fiction timeline, but now he interacts with him again. For Warlord, it's like, a few days later, but for this character, it's been 50,000 years to catch back up to the current time. And he's sort of removed himself from humanity and is kind of like the Watcher. He just records history. He's just doesn't really participate. This is a character I thought was really interesting. We don't actually see that much of him after the end of this little story, but we do get another supporting character here who's really cool, and it's the Sea Snake, the Pirate Lord Hawk. So Captain Hawk, who's very clearly inspired by some of the like the swashbuckling like pirate movies of the 1930s, shows up for the first time here in issue 87, and he's going to be a recurring character that's going to appear, and he's basically like he when they're having this war, he does sort of the naval parts of the war, of the battle against the Atlanteans, and he has an uneasy alliance with Warlord because he's just in it for the money. Issue 88. Things are going to keep getting even crazier. Here's issue 89. Again, we still have the classic, and we still have Cary Burkett on writing, but Rich Buckler has taken over from Dan Jurgens on pencils. Here is Warlord fighting Sabretooth. You can see Tinder's face in the background. Okay, here we are, issue 90. Cover date February 1985. So this is on sale probably November of 84. This is my first issue Warlord. This is one of the first comics I ever bought. So the way it worked for me was I bought a couple issues at the beginning of 1984, spring of 84. And my parents had joined a bowling league. And so it's hard to even exactly remember because I was only 10 and it's been a long time now. It's almost 40 years ago. But basically I bought 2 issues of Black Hawk, and then we didn't go back. I think like it must have been like the bowling season ended or something. I don't know, but those are the only ones I got, and I didn't see any more comics really. But then the next fall we rejoined the bowling league, my parents, and they would give me money to find something to do for like the 2 hours while they were bowling. And so I just bum around the bowling alley. But there was the store nearby that had the comic spinner rack. So I bought this Warlord 90, and I think at the same time I bought this, I also bought Thor. I think it was 350, but it might have been 351. So those are the first, like, we got Black Hawk, and then this is tied for the second comic that I bought, Warlord 90. You can see my copy is signed here by Rich Buckler. I don't have anything signed by Cary Burkett, and I'm going to get to that in a little bit because there's a big mystery with Cary Burkett. A big mystery. But when I first started collecting comics, I was all about the genre comics. I was all about the fantasy and the sci-fi. So like I didn't buy any superhero books. I didn't know Thor was superhero because it looked like fantasy. I'm pretty sure 350 was my first issue because that has a big like fantasy cover right? Whereas 351 is just Thor with a hammer. I wouldn't have known what that meant. But you definitely sold me with the cover, with this crazy monster here with all the legs and the lion face and stuff, shooting lightning out of it. So, yeah, it was all about the fantasy comics. And shortly after this, it was Conan and the science fiction stuff, ROM, Star Wars, Micronauts. Like, those are the things that I was buying when I first started getting into comics. And I started this at just the perfect time because the next issue, 91, is the retelling of Warlord's origin. And this is also an important issue because in this we get Travis as a kid, and there's a bully in this issue who later on in the series becomes returns in the series as an adult, and is still Warlord, sort of Travis is like arch nemesis from back on Earth. So, I got to see his origin right up front, and it's kind of cool. The book is like a split book where there's events taking place in the flashback when he was a kid or when he was in Vietnam or whatever, that are paralleling events that are happening in the present day story. It's a really cool way to retell the origin because it keeps the current story moving forward. It also places the character's origin in the context of the current story. So a really good job. 92. So dinosaurs have been part of the Warlord universe right from the beginning. There's a dinosaur. He's fighting a dinosaur on the cover of his first appearance in first issue special number 8. But they're not really, they rarely come up except for once in a while. Like a dinosaur he'll have to fight a dinosaur in the opening action sequence, and that's it. But in this run from Cary Burkett, they start like riding dinosaurs, right? So there's so many cool things in this run, especially as a kid, that it's just like, yeah, there's dinosaurs. Why aren't you riding the dinosaurs? So Warlord, forget riding a horse. Here's Warlord riding a dinosaur. There's some more crazy stuff coming up shortly. Warlord 93. It's actually in this issue, but I want to show you the cover. Some great covers here. I just love all of these, and these have a huge amount of nostalgia for me. Just looking at these covers, I just feel like I'm a kid again, and just how many times I reread these. I used to reread these over and over. So like it's been a little while since I pulled these out. But man, this run of covers here, 94, 95, 96, like I used to read these over and over, and the covers are so great. Here's a sea monster attacking Warlord. Here's Captain Hawk again. You can see the crisis on Infinite Earths. Now, Warlord was always set aside in like a pocket dimension, right? So there was never any crossover from anything in Warlord into the real world or vice versa. So Warlord didn't appear in like Justice League or something like that. There was always treated as a completely separate thing until Crisis on Infinite Earth. So the Monitor shows up and Harbinger show up. They don't really interact with anybody. It's just them sort of watching what's happening on Skartaris and commenting on it. But it's not like a super intrusive crossover, but it does change the status quo. There is a difference between pre-Crisis and post-Crisis Warlord, even though it's in a pocket universe and the stuff that happens in Crisis doesn't actually affect anything. It does mean that like after Crisis, they combined all the universes into one. So even though Skartaris is in a separate dimension, it opened the door for DC to start bringing in other characters. And we're not going to see that in this video, but we're going to see a lot of it in the next video. At the end of the run, they started, I guess, to try and boost sales. They started bringing in a lot of characters from the rest of the DC universe, which I think was a big mistake. But here at 95, we want some more cool stuff, right? We want some crazy cool stuff. Yeah, how about this? It's a samurai. It's a samurai riding a horse with 2 horns. It's like a double, it's not a unicorn, it's a bicorn horse. and it's got a samurai riding it. Oh, there's ninjas as well. So here's something that I don't think we saw before this part of the run, but Cary Burkett's bringing in parts of Skartaris we've never seen before. He's like, why not have some kind of Asian influence section of Skartaris? So, yep, let's get some samurai riding horned horses. And the ninjas are actually going to get even crazier. You can see my copy here is signed by Adam Kubert, who starts doing the pencils on some of these. This issue, and then there's another one later. The Kuberts, there's Andy Kubert, Adam Kubert. This is Adam Kubert, but Andy Kubert actually does another issue later on. Anyway, again, this is a super nostalgic cover for me. I just read these over and over and over again. And here's one of my favorite covers in the run. Grell is a genius, and he had so many great covers. And there's great covers in this run right up to the very end. But here's a favorite of mine. It's issue 96 with Rich Buckler. Warlord saying, Tara's dead. I killed her. And it's just such a cool... The skull pillars, just... the red background. It looks like there's smoke, there's fire, all the skulls. I just, it's just great. I have this sign down here. It's another signed issue, is Rich Buckler. It's funny, I've met a lot of big names, a lot of people that I'm huge fans of, and usually I only have them sign like 2 copies, particularly if I have to pay anything. I don't want to be that guy that brings a whole stack of books, right? So normally I want to bring 2. But of all of the people that I've met that were like lifelong, comic book heroes of mine, the person that I had signed the most was Rich Buckler, who, I've never really considered like one of my favorites, but when I came time to decide what to have him sign, there were so many things that I wanted him to sign that I ended up, it was only 6, but he was charging. So I spent quite a bit, relatively speaking, on getting his signatures, because there's just so many great Rich Buckler covers on the different titles that I collect. This is up near the top. 97, more ninjas. We got these. We're riding dinosaurs. We got time travel where he becomes the president of the United States. We got swashbuckling pirates. We got samurais riding horned horses. We've also got ninjas, and not just ninjas, mind you. 98, we're getting almost to the end of the run. 99, yes, it's ninjas riding dragons. It's ninjas riding dragons. Imagine that you're me or any other kid in 1985, and you can get this book every month and have the hero riding a dinosaur fighting ninjas who are riding dragons. Why would you buy anything else? Why, am I going to spend my money on Batman? What am I, a chump? No, of course I'm not going to. I'm going to buy this because this is the coolest thing that's ever been printed. But there is a massive mystery here. So everything's been building up. We're getting to the end. Here, we start to reveal who the big bad guy is. He's basically a giant Cyclops wizard. Spoilers. And Cary Burkett has... he's been thinking this through right from the first issue. Introduce the new characters, boom, boom, boom. We set up the new characters, and we get the storyline immediately, huge epic. And he's clearly designed it to culminate in issue 100. He's brought everything together. The momentum, it's clockwork. We get to the end, and then with the story poised to finish in issue 100. Notice anything strange about issue 100? Not only did Cary Burkett leave with Warlord 99, one issue before the end of this epic that he's been setting up and executing for 3 years, not only did he leave the series with issue 99, this is the last comic book that he wrote. He left the industry entirely after this. Now, having said that, in recent years, just the last couple years, my understanding is he has started making self-publishing his own stuff again. But essentially, that was the end of his comic career. So he starts with issue 72. He spends almost 3 years doing this one story. And right when he is about to have the climax and finish his magnum opus, he leaves comics completely. I don't know why. I have not been able to find any information about this, and I have been looking. In fact, I even tracked down an email address for Cary Burkett, and I emailed him to ask him what the story was because I can't find the information anywhere. But I've been around comics a while. As you know, you guys have too. And this absolutely reeks of editorial interference. This, to me, is something where he had a certain story in mind for issue 100. The powers that be decided they didn't want to do that story. They probably mandated certain things that they wanted to have happen, probably because of sales or something. I don't know. Don't know what the sales figures are. And if it was for sales, I think that's ridiculous because DC sales in 1985 were absolute dog poo across the board. So to blame Cary Burkett or this storyline for the bad dropping sales, if they were even dropping, would be ridiculous when the company itself was just poo. But I think that's what must have happened. That's just a guess, but I'm guessing they said, okay, you need to do X, Y, and Z in your ending. We don't like your ending. You have to do it this way. He refused and quit, or they fired him. I've seen that happen so many times. Famous example, Captain America 300, where the author was leading up to this big story, and when he got to that last issue, they wouldn't let him do it, and he quit the book in protest, and someone else wrote the ending to his big story. It's happened a bunch of times, where the editors come in and mess around, and you can kind of see what they're doing here in the story. Michael Fleischer, I like Michael Fleischer, so there's nothing against Michael Fleischer. But basically what happens in the story is, yes, they win, they get Shambhala back. But in the process, several of the supporting characters die. And the supporting characters that die are, I just blanked on his name, Graymere, the guy that I talked about last time, who is the Bard, who is the rival for Morgan's, for Travis's rival for Tara's affection. He was introduced around issue 55 by the previous writer, Sharon Grell. He gets killed in issue 100. Scarheart gets killed in issue 100. Christopher gets killed in issue 100. So the new supporting cast that have sort of been brought in for this storyline, and I haven't really mentioned Graymere, but he's in a lot of the story as well. They basically clear the decks of all the new characters, return it just to the characters that were there before during the Grell era, and sort of reset the status quo. And then basically Jennifer Morgan is seriously injured in this wizard's duel with the bad guy at the end of the issue, and she's basically, all of her life force has been drained, and so she looks like she's 100 years old, and she's just a shriveled woman. And so Travis immediately has to embark on a new quest to save her. So we go from this storyline that runs for 29 issues if you count the setup issues, and we immediately go into another storyline that runs for the next 15 plus issues. And for me as a reader, I loved this storyline, but the next storyline, the quest, that dragged out. It felt like it was all over the place, and that lost me. So that storyline lost me. But I just now that I'm looking at these as an adult, I feel really bad for Cary Burkett to get to the end of this storyline, and again, I just have to assume that he had the rug yanked out from under him, because I can't imagine, after spending that much time and effort putting that much of yourself into these stories, that you would leave voluntarily, that you would just be like, nah, you know what, forget it, I quit. I think even if he was planning on getting a different job in a different industry or whatever he ended up doing, you would write the last issue. You would write issue 100 before you leave. So I feel almost certain that this was some kind of editorially mandated thing, and either he quit or got fired. And I really wish I knew, but I also wish I knew what he originally had planned. Because I really liked these characters that he brought in, particularly Christopher. And I think it was a mistake to kill them all off and reset the status quo, particularly because, as we'll talk about next time, what they then did instead is they started bringing in characters from the regular DC universe. But we'll talk about that next time. Next time we'll be talking about the end of the run, which is issue 133, I think was the last issue. So we'll have the last 33 issues. That won't be the last video in the series because there are other series, later series, miniseries. There's an ongoing series, and I have annuals and crossovers and stuff. I tried to put together basically after his series ended, but before his 2010 series. So this long period of like 20 years. Every once in a while, Warlord would be dragged into a crossover so they could basically keep the trademarks and stuff active. So every so often there would be a storyline where he would be a guest star, and I tried to put together a complete run of all of those. So I'm going to have all of that in another video. So next time, issues, again, 101 to 133. After that, we'll have the annuals, and then we'll have all the stories that happened while he didn't have his own series, and then we'll finish with his 2010 series, which ends the story of Travis Morgan. So let me know what you think down below. If you have any idea what the story was, the Cary Burkett leaving the book after issue 99, let me know. If you can think of anything that's cooler than fantasy warriors riding dinosaurs into battle to fight ninjas that are riding dragons, let me know. But I'm pretty sure that you can't think of anything cooler than that because there is nothing cooler than that. But let me know what you think down below. I'll see you next time.